Are you a woman in the corporate world striving to break barriers, challenge unconscious bias, and lead the way for women in leadership roles globally? If so, this is the podcast for you. Introducing Leading Ladies Who Lunch. The lunch hour is usually the time when colleagues get together for real, honest conversations about work, life, and everything in between. In each episode of Leading Ladies Who Lunch, we'll delve into insightful discussions and share actionable strategies to help you navigate corporate life. Co-hosted by me, Cicy George, a leadership development architect and inspirational speaker. I'm thrilled to share my experience and expertise on leadership, mentorship, and organizational intelligence to help you own your career.
And me, Rachel Lowndes, CEO and founder, imposter syndrome expert, and mindset coach at Rachel Lowndes Coaching and Consulting. Passionate about helping women conquer imposter syndrome and unleash their inner confidence to get the recognition and promotions they deserve.
Jam-packed with insightful conversations, expert advice, and inspiring stories from a diverse group, we'll explore how to overcome obstacles, shatter those glass ceilings, and build unshakable mindsets to unlock your true potential. So whether you're sipping a coffee or enjoying a meal at your desk, tune in for a no-host bar lunchtime chat. Episodes will be dropped every 2 weeks. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, one conversation at a time.
Welcome back to the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. Hey, Rachel, what's shaking?
Hey, Cicy. Always great to see you again. Everything's good with me. I'm excited to get started on the podcast today.
Absolutely. This is a topic I'm really passionate about. So let's jump right in. You know, the other day, an interesting thing happened. I was with my daughter and she was studying for her math test. And I blurted out, I'll never be good at math. It was never my strong point. As soon as I did, and with all the work that I do with imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs, it's like I was trying to get my foot out of my mouth and I couldn't do it fast enough.
Oh, to be fair, I would say the same. I was actually atrocious at maths. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to admit, that it's not a strong point. I guess where it becomes a problem is, when you won't do maths or you won't try because you believe that you can't.
Right. And I also thought, well, I shouldn't talk that way about myself to her because that will also have an impact on how she sees herself. And if she sees her mom talking negatively or limiting about what she can do, she'll get used to that. And it could influence her trying and perhaps goal setting down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, wow, I have done this far too many times in my personal and professional life. I've either said things like, I'm not good at math, or I'll never make it up the corporate ladder, or I haven't had that many accomplishments in my career.
Right, yeah, guilty as charged, right? I've also had some of those beliefs and things coming out of my mouth, and that they come out of your mouth so easily, don't they? Like I've got so many of these. Right? My current favorites are I'm not a good writer. So I've convinced myself that I can't write, which honestly, it just really holds me back. It's a massive block, to be honest. And or I might say to myself, like, I'm not good at this marketing malarkey. Another reason where I'm not making any progress gets in my way. And these statements, they just perpetuate these beliefs in the real world because we're expressing them vocally like that and then confirming that they are real because we then behave accordingly, right? And, most of this time involves some sort of avoidance or procrastination or something like that. They act as excuses. And that's why today we are going to break down these limiting beliefs, what they are, why we use them, how to notice them, and ways to eliminate them.
Right. So let's provide some context for today. This concept of limiting beliefs came out in about 2005 when Wayne Froggatt, who is an author, social worker, and organizational consultant, defined limiting or irrational beliefs in 3 ways. First, that it's a block. It blocks a person from achieving their goals by creating extreme emotions that linger and causes distress and ultimately immobilizes you,
Mhm.
which then, leads to behaviors that can harm yourself, others, and impact your life in general.
Yep.
Second, it distorts reality. Essentially, the limiting belief you tell yourself is a misinterpretation of what is happening, and it's not supported by facts. And then third, it uses illogical ways of evaluating yourself, others, and the world around you, which is why we need to talk about the limiting beliefs that we tell ourselves because it happens to all of us at some point. And then, talking about an issue like this not only normalizes the conversation, but it helps people have the awareness to flip the script and change that narrative. I think it's safe to say that most of us will likely have one limiting belief about ourselves at work, well, if not several, right? And because limiting beliefs work on a subconscious level, most of us aren't even aware of them. Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, totally. We do need to raise awareness. I think it's important to define that limiting beliefs is a very kind of coachy psychology term that some of our listeners may not have heard of before. Like, I know that the first time I heard this term was when I went to see a psychic medium for a reading. Yep, I know that's a story for another day, but she said it really loudly to me across the room, right? Limiting beliefs. And I was sitting on this couch thinking, what on God's green earth is she talking about right now? And, to be honest, when I left, I still had no idea.
Oh my God, Rachel, that is definitely a story I want to hear more about.
Oh yeah, that one's a doozy. But of course, now that I've trained as a coach and I work in this space, I know what limiting beliefs are. So for our listeners, limiting beliefs are basically our mental trash talk, right? That's the inner critic in our head that tells us we can't do or be certain things. And they come from many places. Like, maybe we had a teacher or a parent who told us we couldn't or shouldn't do something. And, because we trust them as our carers, we believe them and carry that belief into adulthood. Or, maybe we were told by other kids that we weren't good at something or we didn't succeed at something. And now we have convinced ourselves that we couldn't do it the first time, so we're never going to be able to do it.
Right.
Things like, I'm not a good presenter because someone else said that we weren't a great presenter after that one presentation we did. Now, that's not necessarily a truth. It's just their opinion at the end of
Mhm.
it, right? Or maybe,
Right.
yeah, maybe we might say to ourselves, oh, I can't play sports. Maybe a teacher or a parent affirmed this because we weren't amazing when we tried it the first time. Or there were other kids who were better than us and they got selected for the team that we wanted to be in.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean we can't play sports. We've just told ourselves we can't because, one instant, individual, or situation. And then, these thoughts become our truths.
I feel like I might have heard the same thing at one point or another earlier on. And I think I've seen, all the statements that you're saying to yourself, I've said them. I've heard my peers, my friends I talk to also say them. And again, what we come to learn is that people's opinions are not the gospel truth, and it does not define who you are or your identity. Remember, these are illogical mistruths that we tell ourselves because, like you say, because of those experiences. Now, I know I received a really low grade in a math test many, many, many years ago. And there was a comment from my dad about how bad I am at math and how great my older brother was at math. So naturally, I thought, okay, my lot in life is to be terrible at math forever. So honestly, I never pursued any life options that included, in some way or another, any kind of math. In
Yeah.
fact, I tried to avoid it at all costs. So as you can see, it really does go to the extreme. And yes, it can come from our parents, our teachers, past experiences, and the media. And then to connect that dot even further, I think we also let society trick us as women into thinking we are bad with numbers.
Mm,
Historically, girls are discouraged from pursuing opportunities in STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, or math. So then you don't even try to pursue those, which also extends into fields that include finance or accounting, for example. Like me, I was never going to pursue those two fields.
mhm.
So those limiting beliefs really keep you from seeing what is possible for yourself. And there might be some listeners right now who, I don't know, see a dream job and think, oh, I'm not capable or qualified enough for it. So they won't even apply.
Yeah, I mean, I failed maths at school. I had to sit it again. And my dad said to me at one point, "Why don't you go into merchant banking, Rachel?" And I thought, "What? I didn't even pass math. No way. Like this is." But I don't, you don't really need maths for something like that. And I think that's a misconception there, isn't it? And
Right.
these beliefs, they limit us, they hold us back, and we often don't even know that that's what's happening to us. We tell ourselves that, the story is, I'm no good at maths, therefore I can't do this. When in
Hmm.
actual fact, that might not even be a reality. You might not even need to be good at maths to do that particular job, but we've got this perception in our mind that, well, I'm
Right.
not good at that, therefore I'm not going to apply for this because that means, and all these other things that we come up with.
Exactly. I think therefore I am, right? And
Yeah.
that's why this problem is so massive. Now,
Mhm.
we already know imposter syndrome is a problem. And in fact, we even did a special two-part series on imposter syndrome.
Yep.
The first part, we looked at the what, the why, and the how, right? And then in the second part, we were joined by a very special guest, Dr. Valerie Young, to help us debunk those common myths. And then we'll include links to those episodes in the show notes so you can reference those later. So, really, how is this different? Well, it is a problem because of several risk factors, such as one, it leads to self-doubt.
Mhm.
Two, it lowers our confidence to try new things and also do important things or pursue that dream job. It even holds us hostage by fear or anxiety.
Hello,
And
procrastination.
exactly. And when you think about it, it really prevents us from creating the life that we really want,
Mm.
which all of these factors all together ultimately has a negative impact on our overall well-being and happiness, right?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the clue is in the name, really. Like our
Mhm.
limiting beliefs keep us stuck. And
Right.
if you feel like your life isn't moving in the right direction, or you're feeling like there should be more to life than what is your current reality, then it's very likely that you've got a bunch of limiting beliefs and negative thoughts that are rolling around in your head on repeat, okay, telling you the same thing over and over. You can't do this, you can't do that, don't do this, don't do that, fear, 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 all that stuff going on. That's going to keep you stuck where you are, and that we need to kind of change that narrative. And that's why it's a
Mhm.
good idea to work with someone to help you identify them and question them, like we need to actually ask them, like, why are you here? What's your point? Is this even helpful? Because most of the time they're not serving you. So
Right.
you need to kind of then reprogram them in your mind so that you can open yourself up to the possibilities available to you and start maximizing to your true potential.
Right. And that's why it's hard because sometimes we just need to get out of our own head. I know
Yeah.
I need to get out of my head sometimes. So definitely talking to people helps with that.
Get out of your own way.
That's right. So let's give a few strategies to our listeners who might be grappling with limiting beliefs they are telling themselves.
Mhm.
So, number one, as you become aware of the limiting belief you tell yourself, take a moment to recognize it and take action, which you
Mhm.
can do by one, trying to look for an example where that limiting belief wasn't true. Two, identify what it's costing you. In other words, what does having that limiting belief prevent you from doing?
Yeah.
And then three, imagine if that limiting belief disappeared. What would you do differently or go on to achieve? So ask yourselves those three questions.
Mhm.
And then also, we've said this before, but in this case, especially, having a coach would be a great way to work on your limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
since you would have that unbiased third party to help you become more aware and counteract that narrative.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
don't know what you don't know, right? So if you work with
exactly,
someone, they can kind of point out those blind spots to you and go, hey, look, you're limiting yourself here. How is that serving you?
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And then if you haven't already, something I like to do is keep track of what you've achieved or your successes and talents on a board that'll serve as a helpful reminder when you are telling yourself you will never be or do something great. It's kind of like having a vision board, only it's a success board.
Oh, I love that. I love that last one. I mean, I'd add that, spend some time asking yourself whether the belief you hold is yours or someone else's is helpful too. Because, as we've mentioned, they often come from somewhere else. And then we kind of
Mhm.
adopt them as like, oh, this is what I believe and I know. But like, you didn't come up with it. It's unlikely you came up with that. So you've got that from somewhere. And it's like, where does that actually come from? Who told me that to start with? Like, did your parents tell you this belief? So
Right.
kind of question where it's come from and find that root cause and its origin, as well as using those tips that you've mentioned there above. Cici, those are really helpful too.
Right. So, wherever you are in your career journey, our hope is that you can take away these insights from this episode. Sometimes there is irrational mental trash talk that plays on repeat in our head, and you have to recognize it and take action.
Mhm.
And think about where those thoughts are coming from and find examples when it wasn't true. And finally, then consider what that limiting belief holds you back from, and then work with a coach to flip that script and change your trajectory.
Yeah, we need to calm that inner critic and shut it up. And
Yes.
and with that, it might be time, to also ask yourself honestly, what beliefs or stories are you holding on to that are limiting your progress? And what are they stopping you from doing or achieving, right? So just really kind of be mindful of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. If we can leave you with one thought, how are you going to address your limiting belief today? If you
Mhm.
like this episode, we would be so grateful if you could share it with your friends and tag us on social media at Leading Ladies Who Lunch. Your reviews of this podcast mean so much to us. We'd love it if you could rate it and subscribe to the show.
Remember, you can find us and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes and follow us on Instagram at Leading Ladies Who Lunch.
Stay tuned for another riveting episode in 2 weeks.
Until then, stay sassy. Thank you for joining us on the empowering journey at the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our insightful discussions, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories that we break down during each episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Leading Ladies Who Lunch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And remember, the conversations you've heard on this podcast are just the beginning of your journey. Let your voice be heard, inspire change, and continue breaking barriers as you lead with authenticity, resilience, and unwavering determination.
Until next time, keep embracing your leadership potential, challenging the norms, and shaping a better world for women in the workplace. Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, changing lives.